Welcome back. So tonight we're trying to grasp the 24 economy, I don't call it strategy or program and projects. So I calibrated this
transformation strategy.
Transformation strategy. So I figured there are a number of pillars, some principles, many programs, and many more projects. Is that how to look at it?
There's three anchors.
Three anchors.
Production transformation based on modernization of agriculture.
That's one anchor or pillar.
One anchor. All right. Two, supply chain and markets efficiency.
Okay.
I think we discussed before that at farm gate, don't forget that we're competing at two levels.
Yeah.
We're competing with imports and we're also competing with the global community when we export. So we need to improve and make our supply chains more efficient.
Good.
You can't have a situation where it's yam, you produce yam and 70% of it gets rotten because you don't have the tools to preserve it from farm gate to the export point of transfer or to Ababloshi. So you need to resolve that, okay?
So supply chain is the second.
Yes, because if you look at the global average, the logistical cost component of products at markets is 15%. In Ghana, 60%. So it really, after farm gate, you're uncompetitive.
Yeah.
So we need to resolve that.
Okay.
And then human capital development. The world is moving to a digital economy. Okay. And we want our people to be basically digitally fluent, able to work with digital technology, invest in digital technology, and also mindset. Change the mindset so people become ethically motivated. Okay. And also motivated by the work process that...
So does that mean that these 8 programs flow from the 3 pillars you've mentioned?
Precisely, because Grow Ghana is basic. Grow 24 is the agricultural component of creating the requisite environment.
Which is under production transformation?
Yes.
Okay.
To produce more in the value chains we've chosen. Oil seeds, cereals, tubers, and so on and so on, which are both industrial crops and also food crops. All right? So that links into Make Ghana, agro-processing, textiles and garments, pharmaceuticals, machinery and technology, which is related to Grow Ghana and also related to some of the measurements that we've made in deciding which components. And within the textiles and garment program, for instance, we are developing industrial parks around that, industrial parks around pharmaceuticals and so on. With the Grow, we're developing agroecological parks along the lake, because what do you need to grow and to create a strong agricultural base? You need water for irrigation. You need land to grow the items. You need connectivity, because now data is everything. All right? You need transport and logistics. Yeah. The lake is 1/8 the price and cost of road. Its carbon emission footprint is much lower than road. It goes north, it goes south, it goes east, it goes west. You can distribute through to Kumasi, to the central part of Ghana. You can distribute to the south and connect to the port through Impakadan. And also you can move all the way up to Yape, so that the Burkina people come and collect their things on inland port at Yape and move it all the way to.
Guys, can you show me the 8 programs? Since it's displaying, I just want to show me the 8 programs if you have it. Because you're already telling me that Grow 24 and Make 24 are under the production transformation.
Yes.
So which else is built and which
build? You know, we have a potential for developing local raw materials. You know, in Philippines and Vietnam and so on, China, they use as part of the structural component of building, they use bamboo. All right. They use different types of composites to support cement in building and making it cheaper and achieve better ventilation and structural integrity. So build is part of that, and we're working with BRI and the industry.
Before you get there, so Grow, you mentioned the specific products. Under Make, do you have specific products? Pharmaceuticals?
Yes. Textiles and garments.
Okay.
All right. Machinery and technology.
All right.
Food and beverages are the main anchors.
Those are the 4 things you want to...
And they're all interconnected.
So this under manufacturing industrialization.
Yes. And then medicinal plants.
Still under Make.
Yes, because you have a $260 billion medicinal plant and food supplements. Have you seen the lady who has developed, using a Ghanaian herb, a potential cure using nanotechnology? She's a Ghanaian, for epilepsy.
Is it?
Which have global consequences for everybody. I'll send it to you. All right? There are people making hundreds of millions of dollars on the African continent using capital O2, importing capital O2 Professor Duncan, who produces cars, it's a huge market. So we need to develop that. And of course, we have the pharmacopoeia and we have the institute in Ekropong.
So that's under make.
Make.
And then build is what?
The infrastructure component. You know that under the program, GIF is the infrastructure partner.
Yeah.
And we need to produce bulk infrastructure to build our agroecological parks and the industrial parks. Roads, irrigation systems, energy systems, and so on.
Yeah.
So that is part of build, but we're going beyond just the building. It's what materials you use for the build. So in relation to build, we're looking at local raw materials, bamboo and so, which is being used, but not in a rational, standardized way. We need to do that, all right? You need to basically invite, as part of your make a build, because we're going to...
So would that involve things like reducing dependence on imported clinker so you can have alternative building materials which are cheaper?
Yes. Have you seen some of the things coming out of Burkina? The school systems, using rammed earth, clay, and so on and so forth. We need to do some of that. The biggest constraint with that is the production cycle is too slow. So you need to automate it and make sure that...
So that's under build?
It's under build, all right?
What is Show 24 doing here?
Well, you know, when you go to England, do you eat Chinese food?
Everybody does.
You do?
Most people do.
You eat Chinese food here?
Here too, everybody does, of
Indian
course.
food?
I'm not good with
Indian food
curry because of the spices.
Okay. So we want our culture to be part of all this, translated through what we're doing to show who we are.
So is this tourism, creative arts thing?
Because don't forget that tourism, creative arts, they're commodities that are exportable, and they are also available for people who want to come and see.
All right.
So show. You know, there's some countries that appoint food ambassadors.
Yeah.
To showcase their culture.
It's called gastronomy.
Exactly. They have competition. You think all these people doing chef on TV are all looking at it and copying? You think it's for fun? Yeah. They want you to eat their food.
Yeah.
And we want to do the same.
So that's Show Ghana.
Show Ghana. And you know, we have a burgeoning, fantastic music industry that's emerging. The Nigerians have taken the lead in relation to Burna Boy and all these people. And we have a capacity. And we need to invest in it. Part of the problem that we haven't invested in our artists. We haven't invested in we have some incredible sculptors who do incredible support. I think it's called Mahama or something like
Ibrahim
that.
Mahama.
Exactly.
It's in Tamale.
So you need to let people know that we have a civilization, and that civilization has these representations.
So you're not just reclaiming production, you're reclaiming culture.
Exactly.
Interesting. What is Connect 24?
Supply chain, what I just described.
Okay.
So along the Volta, you can move about 4 million tons every year. All right? But we start slowly, 500,000 up and down. It's cheaper. You can carry, instead of carrying 30 tons on a 45 feet articulator, you can carry 700 tons in one go. So you achieve economies of scale, you achieve lower costs per unit.
This is using inland water transport.
Inland water transport.
When I saw Connect 24, I thought you were referring to internet connectivity.
Well, that's part of it.
Is it?
Because without connectivity, how do you upload your data? How do you send data to the market? How do you gather your data? So connectivity is very much part of it. But the physical side is the inland water transport system that we've structured in such a way that GIF will create an SPV, achieve concessions, a concession agreement with VRA, which is in charge of the lake, and make sure that that concession agreement is done in such a way that the SPVs also become commercial through viability gap support from government as a one-off, and then you get investors to invest. There's so many people who want to do the lake. I'm sure you know that. So you deal with the lake transport, you upgrade the ports, you upgrade the route systems, you make sure that the navigation charts are in order, and basically you have a vibrant inland waterway.
So you're saying that
Can I just finish?
Just let me understand. If I'm exporting or transporting stuff to Burkina Faso, before your program, I would have driven in an articulated truck, possibly to Kumasi.
Yes.
Your point is that it will get to the Volta Lake. How will it get to the lake?
The railway line in Pakara.
But we just have the line. We don't have anybody running it yet.
Because you don't have the demand. So one of the things you have to do is basically agree on the operatorship, agree on the interconnect. I think there's a short 34-kilometer, which the private sector is willing to invest.
To finish?
Yes, to connect it straight to the lake ports. I understand one of the companies also wants to build a port at near, I think, Eskuma, on the Volta. So you have that. So that gives you your throughput to the port. It also gives you your throughput from the port to the north, to all the...
so rail to Mpakadan to Asikuma, water to Tamale,
yes,
and
or offtake,
Buipe or wherever,
yes,
and then
to
road
to Burkina. But one day, if you're very successful, you can channel the Volta all the way to Burkina.
We haven't spoken about money yet. So because of time, you've explained at least 5.
There it is.
Yes. So you keep saying private sector.
Yes.
But you also mentioned GIF. So just explain the difference between what government money will do and what private money will do.
So let me explain.
Yeah.
GIF has to provide irrigation, energy, using solar as base load, biogas, and the grid itself. So you have a 3-component energy mix. All right? That's one of the SPVs. To provide bulk infrastructure. Infrastructure by itself is not necessarily commercially profitable. But if you have a viability gap supported from government, a one-time off, then GIF can then provide that gap that makes the projects commercially viable, and therefore can invite private sector people who would then benefit from the economic rent arising from providing this infrastructure. Don't forget, if you do irrigation, people pay for the water use. So you must calibrate a water use system that makes it possible to achieve the requisite returns within a framework of fair pricing, and also ensuring that the products that are going to be used, who are going to use water, are basically also competitive at the end of the day. You have energy systems. We're doing captive power. So Bernard, if you're an investor, you can come and say, look, you're doing an Abledu, agroecological zone. You need 5 megawatts of power. I want to establish a 5 megawatt solar plant, microgrid system, and supply you, and I'll charge you X amount of cents per kilowatt hour. In our regime and analysis, it's possible to do that kind of work. We're using solar and biogas and the grid together at 5 cents per kilowatt hour to 7 cents per kilowatt on average, which is dramatically lower than what the electricity company is providing right now. I think they're somewhere around 15, 16 cents per. Because don't forget, power and energy cost is a major cost component that has driven people away.
So you've explained that, but the cost of money. So I kind of get what you say.
So you need viability gap funding to finance the SPVs for the infrastructure. All right? And also do it in such a way that private sector, there are people who invest in infrastructure as a business. So they can enter and join GIF and then
but the private sector money, we know that the way our interest rates are structured, it's not really, our banks only facilitate trade, essentially, right? So they do not have the cost of funds that they can use to do what you're doing. So how are you going to get private sector interested to provide money at the cost that is low enough to do what you're saying?
Okay, so the Fund 24 program is basically related to 2 things: infrastructure, which I've described, and then enterprise financing. The target for enterprise financing is between 7 and 12%.
Interest rate?
Yes. How do we achieve this? Some of the support from DFIs is coming in US dollars for SME on lending. So we are working with the Bank of Ghana to hedge that. So that basically once DBG, which is the
local development bank,
the on-lending bank with Exim and also venture capital and so on. Once basically the finance comes in, you surrender to the Bank of Ghana, you agree on a rate that basically says that you have no exchange rate exposure, so that exchange rate is not going to be passed on, losses will be passed on to the final beneficiary. Also, you are designed in such a way that the monies that you get are basically concessional, so that you can then pass it on to enterprise level at that 7 to 12 rate, but more importantly, that they are patient growth capital. So that if you're an industrialist, you can access and pay not in 1 year, not in 18 months, but in 8.
Hold on right there. So there are a couple of things going on there.
Sure.
Generally, Exim, DBG do not lend directly to the enterprise. They go through a commercial bank. Because I think the risk is that if they lend directly, there's this hazard where people feel it's government money, they won't pay. But the commercial banks usually pad it, right? So they sit in the middle between these development finance institutions and the end user. And I know a lot of companies that complain that DBG wants to give me this as 6-7%. I end up paying 17% because the bank says I do the intermediation and they just make money on the spreads. So until you change the law around how DBG or Exim can work, this is going to be very difficult.
So part of the reason why the banks do that is their perception of risk. So part of the work with the Bank of Ghana is, one, to get the Bank of Ghana to agree on forbearance. So that if, for instance, we are doing this SME on lending, then some of the prudential requirements that relate to the value chains that we're financing under SME will be basically retired temporarily. All right. The hedging will also affect how they can lend and what rates they can lend. And there's also a regulatory sandbox that basically says that, look, because it's a special program, because it's value chain oriented, because it's designed to create jobs, achieve growth, reduce imports, expand exports, there are some things that basically will treat, if I may use a very simple explanation, off balance sheets. So if you have NPLs, those NPLs will not be reflected 100% on your balance sheet. Do you understand? And also, some of the things that have militated against banks lending to customers, particularly collateral. I think I spoke to you before that there is no way that you're going to grow an economy at 36% and where everybody must provide physical collateral by way of house. How many people have a house? So we designed the system in such a way that you have basically some forbearance also in relation to collateral requirements. So assignment of proceeds, LCs, hypothecation of stocks become alternative routes to collateralize a loan. But beyond that, if you look at the scheme, unfortunately we cannot show the picture. We've tried to create credit enhancements and credit backstops all the way to essentially even reinsuring and refinancing some of the credits that will come through. So at every point, you are basically covered. As a bank, as a borrower, even as a borrower, in terms of credit insurance support, you know. So the system is integrated, it has integrity, and it's ultimately designed to attract investors if you decide to securitize those loans, your SME loans, and list it on the exchange. So it's a bit complicated, but it is designed clearly to achieve an integral whole where we change the paradigm of financing to long-term patient growth, low interest loans, less hard asset collateralization, and more, soft collateralization.
We'll take a break. We have two more to touch on, Aspire and Go. There's also questions around, we've seen this before, right? Some will say, we've had development authorities at the MPP. We've had other development attempts in the past. What makes this different? Stay with us.